Doing it for almost a year now. And just, you can sit quietly during this exercise. You can close your eyes. You can look softly downward, or you can stare at the person next to you. Whatever you feel is appropriate for yourself. So we're going to shake it off from Mondays and welcome ourselves back to city business after a long weekend of holiday celebrations and family and friends, Small Business Saturday, anything else that you packed into your holiday weekend. So notice how you're sitting, how you're feeling. Find a way to be relaxed but alert. And I invite you to start focusing on your breath. Start taking slower, deeper breaths. We're going to just take a couple or 3 inhales. Exhale. Inhale on 4. Exhale on 5. And again. Exhale. Shake your body out, flap your arms like a turkey. And just be grateful that we're all here to talk about city, business, our community, and that we're all here to help improve our community. So with that, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, Mr. Clerk, we need roll call, please.
James.
Present.
Leaks May.
Yes.
Mikulski.
Here.
Polika. Here. Piana.
Here. Next up on the agenda is approval of the agenda, and I think we have a small minor change.
Yes, I would move that we accept the agenda with the one change of moving item 4D, consideration of the contract for
8D.
I'm sorry, 8D. Consideration of the contract for the expansion of the residential compost program to 4C in the presentations.
Second. Moved by Polika and seconded by Mayor Pro Tem James.
Polika.
Yes.
James.
Yes.
Leaks May.
Yes.
Mikulski.
Yes.
Piana.
Yes. All right, and that takes us to our 4th agenda item, which is presentations. And first up is 4A, is an update by our new state representative, Helena Scott. And welcome to the Ferndale Council Chambers. You can come up to the podium. Yeah. Good to see you, and congratulations on your election.
Thank you so very much. Thank you, council members and also constituents. I'm really pleased to be here this evening. I'm State Representative Helena Scott, representing House District 7, which now I'm so happy to say that includes Wayne County and also Oakland County, which is Ferndale, Royal Oak Township, half of Royal Oak Township, a quarter of Royal Oak, and all of Pleasant Ridge. And I'm very, very happy and excited to be here. I want to thank you personally for your support and your vote. Just know that I am going into my 2nd term, and I'm really excited to, represent you in the State House. Currently, I represent my constituents on the Wayne County side in House District 7 on energy, communications and technology, and financial services. We're in the process of now selecting new committees. I'm excited to say, and I'm sure that everybody already knows this, but we flipped the House, right? We flipped the House and we flipped the Senate. So what that means is, and I'm assuming everybody is a Democrat, maybe you're not, I don't know. But the Dems are in control. And that means a lot. That means that we can fight every day and successfully approve things with our democratic values, because it's been a little tough, I can honestly say, in my first session, in the House not being in control. I'm happy to also report that we just nominated and elected our first African-American male Speaker of the House, which is Joe Tate. So he is going to be the Speaker, which is, you can clap for that. That's exciting. That is so very exciting. I'm also glad to say that he has currently named me as one of the vice chairs of the Democratic Caucus. So I was very pleased. I'm on the leadership team in the House. I'm very excited about that. And like I said, we're in the process of selecting our standing committees. Like I said, currently I'm on energy. I'm hoping to be on energy, but I'm also hoping to do a little bit of policy and approach. So it's not really much of an update that I can give you. I know that we will be in session the week of the 6th of December, where we're only in session for 2 days. We'll be giving goodbye speeches to those that are leaving office. Also proud to say that Representative Kyra Harris-Bolden, who's our first elected, or appointed, shall I say, Michigan Supreme Court Justice, African-American woman, which another first. We're starting the year off with first, so this is going to be fantastic. So I just wanted to really come here personally today to thank you and thank all of you here. I'm looking forward to working with you and making sure that you have your needs and concerns met in Ferndale. I'm happy to say that your esteemed mayor, Mayor Piana, was one of the first to endorse me in Oakland County, and I'm very proud of that, and I thank you for that as well, along with a lot of the council members as well. So I appreciate your support. Just know that I'm going to work extremely hard for you. My office is always open to you. I do have my chief of staff here, if you would rise, Gregory Humphreys. He will be here if on times that I'm not here, or we'll both be here together, but you can be assured that we will be attending the meetings, we will be listening to your concerns, and I believe in action. So feel free to reach out to my office, feel free to come to Lansing. It is the people's house. Just know that you can come to session anytime, you can come to my standing committees, come to us with your concerns and your issues, because that's the reason why we're there. You put me there to address those things for you. And just know that I'm always going to be accessible to you and accountable to you for those things. So I just wanted to come by tonight to say thank you again. That's all of the update that I have. We will be having more updates in next year. I do have another engagement I need to go to, so I can't really stay very long. But I do want to pass out my cards to, these are old cards. So I'm just going to pass it out to the council members. They do have my current office number, but they have my old committees and my old district. So just know when I come back, I'll have more cards for the constituents, all of you all, the residents. I appreciate it. And any questions maybe for me? Anyone? No? Okay, sounds good. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, State Representative Scott.
Again, thank you again for your support and your vote, and I truly appreciate it. Thank you.
Good luck on the shortest lame duck year.
Yes, they call it a lame duck.
All right, next up is 4B. We have a presentation of the 2022 Special Events and Sustainability, which is going to be led by Michael Larry and Claire Dion, who are supportive of one another on sustainability and events. Thanks you guys for pulling this together.
Hello, and hope everybody had a wonderful holiday. So, my name is Michael Larry. I'm the Director of Special Events for the City of Ferndale, and Claire Dion is our Sustainability, the Zero Waste Program Coordinator, presenting the presentation today. So I will take up a few minutes first, and to just do a brief review of this past 2022 season. So first I wanted to just show you that here's a list of all the different special events that were taking place in Ferndale. Starting with in April with our Parks and Rec with Extravaganza, all the way down to our upcoming event, Santa's Parade, December 3rd. And if you see here, you'll notice that there are events that are being produced by the Parks and Rec Department. There are events that are being produced by myself as a member of the city manager's office. And then, of course, we have private events that are being provided permission to utilize public space, primarily from City Council, where we take the time to, once they apply, then I receive that application. They go through a process of review to hopefully find an approval that will allow them to present their event here in Ferndale, whether it's at a city park or most likely in downtown Ferndale. Of the special events that have taken place, there have been various locations. 5 have been held at our various city parks, 10 specifically at Schiffer Park in downtown Ferndale. 6 events utilized parking lot locations. There were 10 events also that required street closures, 2 on West Troy, 3 on West 9 Mile, 2 West 9 Mile that were parades, and 3 that were held on East 9 Mile. And of course, that could be comprised of where, such as Pig and Whiskey, utilized a portion of East 9 Mile, the library parking lot, and then what we call the Falvey lot that is directly behind the Woodward Avenue Burgers. So I just wanted to give you a synopsis of what areas we were utilizing and where they were taking place. Now, as a welcoming community, the city of Ferndale has become known as a host community of a variety of special events, from art fairs, festivals, 5K walks, and the Woodward Dream Cruise. As Ferndale continues to embrace special events, our primary goal is to always maintain safety while promoting quality of life and boost economic opportunities for our local downtown businesses. The responsibility of the facilitator, which is myself, the Director of Special Events, is to review and go through the permitting process of all special event applications that request the temporary use of public space, followed by a publicly held meeting with the Special Events Committee. This is representative by the police, fire, DPW, code enforcement, parking, and sustainability. Whereas if an event is being proposed in downtown Ferndale, the Ferndale DDA participates, and if the event is requesting use of a city park, then the Parks and Rec Department participates. The review process begins once an application is received. The facilitator contacts the applicant to discuss their submitted proposal plan and event layout to determine if there are any concerns that may conflict with city code or the special events policy. If so, the applicant will be advised of necessary revisions and an estimated cost of city services and staff time that might be necessary. Once an applicant has made the necessary revisions, if there are any, to their proposed plan, the next step would be a scheduled public meeting with that Special Events Committee. This meeting will always take place here in City Council chambers. At that time, the Special Events Committee then reviews the proposed plan to determine whether or not they can support. There might be a possibility that there is a minor change that would feel more comfortable, such as, let's say that there's an issue with food trucks and making sure that there's a distance of, for safety reasons because of the propane tanks. The fire chief or the representative from the fire department will make that note and then ask them to make that adjustment on their floor plan. The Special Events Committee will then consider the following: what type of event, the location, the estimated number of attendees, the event layout plan, food services, traffic and safety and parking plan. Additional requirements would be whether or not there is a necessary need for additional permits, such as for staging, moonwalks or inflatables, or a temporary liquor license. During the Special Event Committee meeting, City Department representatives will ask questions concerning staffing, street, parking lot closures, setup, and breakdown schedules. If there are no objections, the committee will make a motion to support this proposed plan. At that point, then, we would prepare an agenda item for a City Council upcoming meeting, requesting approval of a special event permit for that special event applicant. The City Council is always required to make an approval of any new events that are being proposed or any event that has a request for a temporary liquor license. Any of those events that are defined as annual, meaning they come back every year, that do not involve a liquor license, the city manager's office can approve those events. The event planners are also required to participate in what we call a walkthrough. That walkthrough takes place at least 7 days, roughly, prior to the event with the special event committee members to remind us, to refresh us of the layout, the proposed plan, to make sure that everybody's on the same page, that we focus on the most important thing, and that is public safety, but also make sure that it is a positive experience for not just the city staff that are working the event, but the event planner and, of course, the attendees and the participants that are experiencing this event. After the event has taken place, then the Special Events Committee and the event planner will hold a wrap-up meeting to discuss how it went. Was there anything that needs to be improved? Especially if you do plan to return, we want to make sure that whatever tweaks or anything that's necessarily concerning will be, adjusted and corrected. Otherwise, it's just a moment to praise and say, great job, you did a fantastic. We look forward to you again next year. And of course, down here, the applicant's responsibilities are to agree to the terms and conditions of the city's special events policy. They're responsible for the conduct of their attendees, the participants, and the contractors. They're responsible to make sure that our sustainability policy is being followed, that they contact the Oakland County Health Department related to any food service requirements. If there is a request for a temporary liquor license, as stated, it must be approved by City Council, and also they must receive an approval by the Michigan Liquor Control Commission. And of course, after all this is done, they get that nice little invoice from the city, reimbursing us for all those city services and staff time, so that, of course, our local community is not paying for these services, but that the event itself is reimbursing the city for those funds. And of course, if there are any concerns, any penalties or violations, they must be rectified. And then invoices must be paid within 30 days after an event has been completed and invoiced. Otherwise, there could be a possibility of a revoking of any future applications not honoring their obligations. So I'm glad to say that we've never had to have that experience yet, and hopefully we never will. The applicant themselves are given a checklist. The requirement for any level, which we have what we call four hazardous levels, one being the most minor, which is, for example, if someone wanted to utilize the city council chambers to do a meeting, there's no fee to that at this time. However, level 4 is our highest level, and that requires certain expectations, such as if you have a festival and there is a liquor license request, that is considered a level 4. And level 4 is also required to follow the sustainability policy, where we have a third party who comes in and does the service for the city at what we expect, and the conditions and requirements to make sure that we're doing the right thing, to make sure that the least amount is going to the landfill versus being recycled or reused, or food waste is being recovered. So then at 60 to 75 days prior to the application, there is a scheduled meeting with the Special Events Committee. The 14 to 7 days prior to the event is the walkthrough. 7 days prior to that, they're required to provide us a certificate of insurance to make sure that any accidents we're protected from any accidents. The day of the event, if there are any issues that need to be addressed, they need to be as the setup is taking place. The debrief or the wrap-up afterwards is at least 7 days after the event, and then, of course, the 30 days of invoicing. This is just a brief explanation of how the process works, and starting once we receive the application all the way to the end and after it's been completed, and looking forward to another year in 2023 with the majority of all these events that you did see at the first presentation or screen. So are there any, just by the way, we do have some special event representatives. We have Mark Loeb here from the Funky Ferndale Art Fair, which I believe, other than Dream Cruise, you're the longest event that's been held here. Yeah, 20 years. So I just want to say, Krista's here with Gravity Art Fair. Did Out of the Darkness? Out of the Darkness is here. They do the walk. This was your second year, and you had how many this year for the walk? So Ferndale is a well-received, welcoming community that also is known to be where you want to hang out and have fun and have a good time during a special event. And so we appreciate all the work that you guys do. So, she's incognito. I didn't see her in the speaker. Julia is here with the Ferndale Pride, which is like you had over 15,000, 20,000 people here this year. It was beautiful. It was probably the nicest weather y'all have had. Usually you get rain sometime during that day, but this year was perfect weather. So I would now like to present to you Claire Dion.
Hi, Claire. Good evening, everyone. I'm here today to present on our sustainability updates from this past special event season. Grateful for Michael for providing a little bit of context on the process, since it is important to work with event producers every step of the way in order to help manage our sustainability for the events. And just to provide a little bit of context of my own, the reason that we started this new program was because of the adoption of the 2020 Waste Reduction and Recycling Master Plan, which had a recommendation to adjust the city's special events policy to increase the requirements for sustainability and improve overall event recycling rates. And so that's what I was tasked to do this past year as the Zero Waste Program Coordinator. So this year, we made 3 main sustainability changes. And these new requirements came from, both that plan that I mentioned, but also our newly adopted climate action plan to help match our goals that came out of that plan. The 3 new changes, the first being the new sorting bins, which we were able to purchase through an EAGLE grant. And these bins allowed us to collect more materials than before and allowed for easy sorting. These bins can be reused and customized for each event, and so we were happy to be able to introduce them to the different events as we can kind of shift and manage them as needed, depending on the layout of the event and the size and whatnot. The second update being that there were new requirements for the Hazard 4 events, which Michael mentioned. The Hazard 4 kind of indicates the largest size with the specific type of event that tends to bring in the most waste into the city. And so that new requirement was to require the Hazard 4 events to use a third-party waste service. So some events have already been using this method of waste management for the events with success in the past, and we definitely applaud them for leading the way on this. And this new requirement really allowed for standardization across all the Hazard 4 events to accurately collect data on what types of materials we were collecting and what types of, or how much waste we were able to divert from the trash by separating our waste ahead of time and doing some post-waste sorting as well. And the third new update for this year is a new education program that was launched to help communicate with food vendors to expand their knowledge on compostable serviceware. All right, so here are the data points from different materials that were collected in 2018. So you'll see that we have 3 different categories: the mixed recycling, which includes paper, plastic, metal, We collect a lot of cardboard at events. Paper is sometimes a little bit more challenging since it tends to be contaminated by the time that we get to it, but things like other mixed recyclables are really great to be able to recover, such as cans and bottles, and like the cardboard, like I mentioned. And then organics, that is our food waste, as well as the compostable products that we're able to recover, that the food waste is perhaps being served on. And then the rest of it that we aren't able to collect and divert will go to the landfill, and that will be all of our leftover trash. So our diversion rate has been calculated for some of the different events back in 2018, and with the diversion rate, the higher the number, the better we're doing, because that means that we are able to recover more amount of that waste. So in 2019, or both 2018 and one event, we have data from 2019. You'll see that we have less accurate data reporting, and that all of our diversion rates are under 34%. And, of course, that can be due to a lot of different things, depending on, the size of the event and what type of materials are being used at that event. But it was really important for us, as also one of our main goals with the Waste Reduction and Recycling Master Plan, is to be able to increase the data collection for different material management programs that we have here at the city. So it's really important to be able to understand what we're working with so that we know how to improve, and we can set better targets for the future. So next I have our diversion rates from this past year of 2020. You'll see that in all of our events, for our Hazard 4 events, we collected organic waste at all the events for the first time. And our highest diversion rate is over 50% actually, and our lowest is coming in around 35. So this is still an increase from all of our diversion rates actually from 2018 with our new requirements and programming. And I'm pretty impressed, to say the least. I mean, we had a city goal that was kind of ranging around 40%. Of course, trying to top our 2018 numbers without reaching too high in the sky and keeping it realistic. And so we definitely were able to go beyond that. And it gives us a really great starting point to understand how to set a goal for the future and make tweaks in the program so that we can recover more materials year after year. So you'll see here that our average for our 2022 diversion rate was 43.3%, which is a 16.3% increase from 2019, which is great, which is really great to see. And the new requirements really made the data collection possible, because without having the third-party waste service that is able to kind of come in and strategically sort and measure the different materials to allow us to know what actually we recovered, without that process, we wouldn't actually have the numbers to show any sort of increase. So it's been really great to see that we diverted as a city over 5,000 pounds of recycling material and food waste from the landfill. And the data collection will be really important in understanding the environmental impacts of the waste recovery moving forward so that we can really calculate the different types of climate mitigation efforts that we're participating in. All right, so a few different successes from the first year of this program. I'd say about 3 really stood out. The first being, like I mentioned before, the standardization and the accountability of this the new requirements brought. And requiring recycling and organics collection was definitely a necessary step to be able to increase our diversion rate. Just for reference, in the past, before 2022, recycling and different sustainability behaviors were always recommended for different events, and this is the first year that we've required our Hazard 4 to offer both recycling and organics collections. That being said, all hazard levels events are welcome to use our waste sorting bins and are definitely welcome to learn about our program and still have the same access to the education, and we can support them along the way if they're interested in putting forth the same program. So it's not that the other hazards are, not welcome to participate, but rather the requirements are targeted at the larger events so that they can make the greatest impact. The second success is the positive feedback that we have received from both event attendees as well as our food vendors at different events. So I was able to conduct interviews at the first few events and ask questions about what they thought, both from the event attendee side of how things were managing in the program. And it's great to hear that a lot of our event attendees were super impressed with the new systems that we set up. They liked the look of it, they liked the ease of it, and they really appreciated the increased recycling options and gave a big thumbs up to Ferndale for doing a great job on the sustainability side of things. And then in terms of positive feedback from vendors, a lot of our vendors were already on board with using the compostable serviceware, and for those that weren't, they were very optimistic about being able to use it for Ferndale special events and, have familiarity with different requirements from different events that they attend, whether those be other city events or private events such as one of the largest music festivals actually in Michigan does require compostable serviceware. So some were very familiar with that and had positive experiences in the past. And then the third success, of course, is the increased diversion rate that I had mentioned in the past, which goes great to support our city's climate action goals and also to help maintain Ferndale as a gold Michigan green community, which we received this year, which was really exciting, a gold community for the first time. All right, now that we have talked about all of the positives of the program, I can mention a few of the challenges and how they've impacted throughout the program this year and how they will impact future years. So because this program was brand new, it was a test run in a lot of ways, and we learned a lot about what could be shifted and perhaps done differently moving forward. So moving forward, there will be 3 main changes and improvements to the program, and the first being that we want to provide increased support to the event organizers by, pursuing volunteers on their behalf to help reduce costs for the events waste services. Being able to provide volunteers will help, reduce costs in terms of labor for their events. And the increased staff capacity at the events will, of course, allow for an even better diversion rate years in the future. The second being that we want to, of course, ensure the success of an increased diversion rate. And in order to, increase more than we have in this past year, we will have to add some increased requirements. One of those being for food vendors to utilize compostable serviceware. So with the city's feedback, with the event organizers' feedback, the city is very excited to explore a new format for an enforcement policy that would allow food vendors to, of course, participate in events with their compostable serviceware, but in lieu of a penalty that was previously mentioned, a new sustainability policy will become enforceable, which would allow the city to actually shut down a food vendor and just ask them to either make a correction and be able to acquire the compostable serviceware that is required to be a part of the event. And if that correction cannot be made before the event occurs, then they would in fact be asked to leave. The third goal or program revision that we have is just to establish a goal of 60% diversion for the upcoming season. So this is definitely a lofty goal, but I look forward to seeing where this goal takes us and really working towards it with some of our new requirements, the increased education, some increased staffing at the events, as well as the consistency of having the third-party waste service join each event. And last up here, I really just wanted to end with some acknowledgments for the different stakeholders that have made this program possible. Pink Elephant Events, who worked 4 out of 5 of our different Hazard 4 events, worked tirelessly to divert waste and to help the city reach our goals. Pink Elephant Events actually won the Fall into Recycling pitch competition that occurred in October of this year for their work across Southeast Michigan. So I'm really excited to see how our partnership with them looks moving forward, and I'm just excited to see that they're getting the recognition that they deserve in terms of zero waste practices across Michigan. So that's really great. I next want to thank our event producers for being patient with us through this new process. With your help, we've made a lot of great progress in the first year, and we've taken your feedback as well and helped implement that for years moving forward. I also want to thank the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy for providing funding for our new bins, helping making this possible. And lastly, just to our amazing community, because these events are really full of life, and they've really supported the zero waste efforts and helped by asking questions and being curious, noticing the efforts, and really just making Ferndale a really fun place to be and hang out and have our events at.
Thank you, Claire.
Thank you.
For the presentation. I know we have a lot of event planners in the room, and it's not typical, but since everybody came out after Thanksgiving, does anybody would like to make a comment? Invite you up to.
Sure. Yeah.
On the policy, there's no need to, but I'm opening it up in case anybody would like to say anything. I just appreciate you all being here and giving feedback on the policy. I know last year when we discussed this as council as a policy, and we said it's given another year and make adjustments, so I appreciate staff doing that based off the feedback from the event producers. And I just wanted to call out, I appreciate Julia Music always reaching out to me to figure out how to improve the process, and also Krista Johnson for the DIY Street Fair and Gravity events, who took some walks with me so I could learn about where improvements can be made. But ultimately, it's an administrative process between staff, and I commend Joe and staff for trying to work through this. This was one of my first issues when I first got elected in 2010, was event management. So it's an ongoing process, and the process back in 2010 was also needed improvement. So it's an ongoing change as we all evolve and new technology and new things come into play, and new ideas about how to entertain and engage people come into our event. So I just really appreciate everybody working on this collaboratively. All right, well, thank you so much, Claire and Michael.
Are we allowed to ask questions?
Yes, yes.
Please do.
Through the chair. I'm curious to know how weather plays into the collecting of your data. So sometimes an event, like I know DIY in the middle of, it was DIY, in the middle of it, or maybe it was Pig and Whiskey, it kind of rained out almost one of the days, and there have been some other events. Are we keeping track of that to note that, you know, maybe some of the increase in one year over another is due to weather? I know when that happens, all of a sudden you get a downpour. I don't think patrons and vendors are thinking about, oh, I need to put it in this bin. They're just throwing things away to get out of shelter, you know, get into shelter.
Yeah, definitely. Weather is always taken into account, both during the event itself in terms of collecting material. You know, we have to be careful that our cardboard is staying dry, for example, because once the cardboard is wet, it's more difficult to recycle. So, you know, managing the materials on site in different weather conditions is definitely really important, especially collecting organics in the heat. You know, we have some tricks of the trade for that to help, you know, mitigate some of those challenges. And it will be important, like you said, with data collection moving forward. I would say with our 2022 year, having our requirements for both recycling and food waste collection, I kind of see this as our base data, but moving forward, I think it'll be very important to track because, you know, with, like you said, in different weather events, you'll have either increased or decreased participation, which will directly correlate to the amount of material that's being collected. You know, if you don't have as many people at the event, there's just not going to be as many recyclables to collect.
Yeah, true. Yeah. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions from council? Again, thank you for the comprehensive presentation.
Through the chair, just one comment too. There is no action for council tonight, but I do want to be clear that with special event policy changes, the ordinance committee should just study the ordinance language and will determine what changes we need to make sure that the policy is linked up with the ordinance. And I want to make sure that we do that going into the new year. So I'll ask the committee to look at that over the next few weeks.
So you expect that ordinance to come to council the first?
Well, in the early part of the year, yeah, I'd like to be ahead of the special event season.
Okay.
The ordinance committee is a city council subcommittee, but I'd be happy to meet with producers to walk through the policy changes before we sit down with council.
All right, I'll let the city manager lead that up with all of the event producers. All right. With that, I'm going to close out this presentation. Thanks again. All right, that concludes all of our presentations, and I'm moving on.
4C.
Oh, geez. 4C, sorry, I did not write it down. We are moving on to 4C, and we keep Claire here for her second round. And which was 8C, no, it was 8D, consideration of the contract for the expansion of the residential compost program. So we have some changes coming more to residential composting.
Yes, hello again. Won't take up too much of your time here, but I did want to just explain a little bit about some of our future hopes in terms of expansion of the residential compost program. Today on the regular agenda, you'll see the consideration for the expansion of the program. So today I'm just going to cover briefly just the compost program's goals, our timeline moving forward, a few additional details about the expansion, and then the costs of said expansion. This slide here is the original slide that I presented to you all back in October of 2021, right before we were about to launch the residential compost pilot, and it listed 4 different goals for the program. And very happy to say that we've met, all of these goals by introducing the compost pilot and being able to collect and divert residential food waste. So our goal over the last year has really been to work with a compost hauler that would allow us to accept a wide range of compostable materials. So check, we were able to do that. We wanted to put this program together in the first place to really move towards our climate neutrality goals, which is now supported by our city's climate action plan, so we've done that. We wanted to collect data and track our greenhouse gas emission reductions over the course of this past year, and we've been able to work through that. And of course, we wanted to be able to plan long-term to implement a future program in which more of our residents would be able to participate in. And just to provide a context on the timeline for the way that this program was rolled out, back in October of 2021, the city received a grant from Next Cycle Michigan, which allowed us to plan for this pilot program, which was then launched in November of 2021. Now that it's November of 2022, a year really flew by, and we are upon completion of the compost pilot. And our final data report will be put together with all of our year-end data from the pilot, which will be put together in December and presented back to you all at a city council meeting in January. And we're hoping then to expand the program then in order to accept more food waste. So just in terms of our participation, we had 400 participants of the pilot that originally registered, and we were able to give out materials for all 400 that registered. We've had a really steady participation rate throughout this past year, which has been, a key in terms of wanting to expand the program. 2 different rounds of follow-up surveys were sent to all of the 400 participants. One of them after 6 months, and one of them after 1 year. That survey has just recently gone out, so if anyone here is participating, remember to check your email and respond to that survey. We'll have that open for a couple more weeks here so we can still receive some more data before I put together the final report in December. And we do have an ongoing wait list as well, which now has 95 different residents on it that have expressed interest in joining a future program. So in terms of the program expansion that is for your consideration tonight, this would continue on the pilot program premise, which is that our organic waste collector hauler that we're working with, that's the most local to Ferndale, is My Green Michigan, and they would continue to collect the food waste, organic waste carts weekly, and they provide us the 64-gallon food waste carts with these biodegradable liners that help maintain the carts. And My Green Michigan each week picks up that food waste and transfers it to a certified compost facility. A big part of the expansion would also be to keep the program free to participants to help support equity and support our climate action goals. A few additional details for the program expansion. The expansion in the contract that you see in the agenda notes today is based on the participant data that has been collected over the past year. So that includes the frequency of drop-offs, the amount of food waste that has been dropped off, per drop-off. All of these different questions were included in our surveys to help estimate, what type of capacity we would need for a certain amount of residents moving forward. So we currently have 5 locations and 14 carts, and this new expansion would increase that to 7 locations and 30 carts, which would double our food waste capacity up to 1,900 gallons of capacity, which is about 384 full 5-gallon containers of food waste per week. If the program were to be expanded, registration would still be required for anyone that is interested in participating. And based on our participant data, the new expanded program with the 30 carts would be able to accommodate between 800 and 1,000 participants. So the plan would be to release 400 additional signups in January of 2023 with the flexibility to be able to add more participants soon after based on the site usage. So this would honor the 400 pilot participants that are currently participating. They've done a really awesome job to support this program throughout the past year, so we want to make sure that they can continue to do so. And a part of this contract that you see tonight would be to allow the buffer time between now and January to keep the carts around so that residents can continue on their usual schedule of composting their food waste. And last up here, I just have the breakdown of the costs for the contract, and the estimation of the 12 months of the organic waste hauling would be $30,535, and with $5,000 that would be set aside for flexible spending for increased summer pickups. Something that we have learned in this past year is, to be able to have the flexibility to have, twice a week pickup in the summer months due to the heat. And of course, these 12 months of hauling, the costs from November of this year into November of next year would come from the Ferndale sanitation budget, as we were able to allocate $45,000 for a food waste diversion program for the 2023 budget that was a part of the Waste Reduction and Recycling Master Plan. And I know I'll come back to present you all the formal data in January, but I just wanted to leave you with one piece of data that you could hold on to, which is that 96% of our survey responders indicated that they would recommend this program to a neighbor or a friend. So I think that's pretty impactful to show that people have enjoyed participating and really want to grow the community of composters in the city. And 99% of the survey responses indicated that they're participating in the program for sustainability reasons. So we've got a lot of awesome sustainability residents and minded folks here in the city, which is just super awesome to see. And actually 51% 51% of the survey responses specifically indicated that they were participating to help the city reach our climate action plan goals, which is really cool because they want to support us and we want to, support them back by providing the options for diverting their food waste. And that's all I have. Do you have any questions at all?
I'll open up for council. Do you have any questions about the expansion?
Well, I have some questions about the program that probably affect the expansion. So we currently have 400 households that are participating.
Correct.
Do we know if all of those 400 participants are active? Like, I mean, I could have taken a bucket, but I haven't really done anything. I mean, I didn't, but, I could have. I haven't done anything in 3 months or 4 months. I'm just not utilizing the program. Do we know that? Do we know who is active and who isn't active?
I'd say our best bet for understanding the activity of the participants came from our survey responses. So both in our mid-program survey and our follow-up survey, we asked folks, are they participating either regularly or not, even if it's just every once in a while participating in the program. And in the almost 300 responses that we received in the first follow-up survey, 298 of them said that they, yes, were active participants. And then that gave me a good indication to be able to reach out to those that weren't active just in case they needed any additional support or questions answered. So that's a similar question in the final follow-up survey as well. The survey responses are still coming in, so it'll be interesting to see how those numbers relate to the mid-program survey. But of course, folks could also be participating and just weren't interested in following up with the survey information. So I think our, with the program like this, it's a lot is kind of on the blind trust, right? Of, allowing the program or participants to interact with the program however they see fit. And at least we know that we haven't had too many participants, working or participating in the program because our bins haven't been overflowing. So that's definitely good to see.
Yeah, that's good. And then my other question is, are we going to take into account, or did we, in the first round, take into account the number of users within a household? Because, if we had a number of, the first round had mostly 2 and 3, person households, and this next round has more 4 and 5s, we're going to get a lot more waste, with the additions. Are we taking that into consideration at all?
Yes, yeah, and that is something I did actually research quite in depth because I thought the very same thing, and I was surprised to see actually that sometimes single or dual person households actually create more food waste because there's different portions in which you're purchasing your food. So there's not like a direct correlation for the increase of the size of the household for the increased food waste. It's also important to take into consideration whether or not a larger household might have children, because maybe children are picky and don't want to finish their food, and maybe you have additional food waste that way, the corners off the sandwiches and the mushy blueberries and all of those things that maybe a household of adults wouldn't have that type of food waste. So it's really all over the board, and so it's a little bit difficult to control in terms of like registration numbers. So moving forward, we would still have the registration per household, but our registration kind of questionnaire would ask for the numbers of the household just to kind of keep tabs on the amount of food waste coming in. But that has been a really interesting data point over the past couple of surveys to see how frequently households of different sizes are filling up their 5-gallon bucket.
Thank you.
Anybody else on council have questions?
Through the chair, something that you just said prompted, with the expansion, any Ferndale household can participate, is that right?
Right, so because we're operating kind of on the first year post-pilot, my goal would be to still have a similar registration process and cap that registration to just be sure that the city is able to match the capacity that's coming in from the program participants.
You anticipated my second question, thank you. So it'll be sort of open for anyone, but we're asking them to register so that we have data to measure, and we're capping it at what?
So with the increased capacity of the new carts, we would be able to accommodate around 1,000 participants total, but the new program registration would cap off at 800 just to ensure that we're kind of managing our numbers correctly. You know, we can always add more participants later, but, you know, it'd be heartbreaking to cancel some of those participants out. So we would start low and be able to kind of slowly build. Of course, this year, being the first following the pilot, you know, it can still be relatively small, and then we can grow as years go on. The 95 participants that are on our wait list, I would assume, are ready to start the program right away. Hopefully, many of them at least still remember that the program is around, so hopefully they'll be excited. But beyond that, it's really hard to know how many participants are interested in regular participation with this type of program. So we could see that maybe the registration really kind of caps off around 600 or 700, and then you know, we need a lot of education about the program, or trying to make things easier for folks in order to gain more participants, or we could see the opposite, that, you know, participants are, you know, ready to register every step of the way. So it'll be interesting to see once if we are able to, you know, increase the participation rate to really see how far it goes. Who knows?
And what's the time frame for sort of your first review of that information for potential reassessment?
When the program is expanded, that will be a weekly check-in, just to really be sure that the amount of carts are able to accommodate the increased participation rates. Because of course we will want to, you know, move carts around and shift different locations depending on the site usage, and, you know, really be in tune with how folks are participating, so that, you know, we're able to maintain a clean and just compost site.
Thank you.
The chair, I had a quick question about some of the locations on the last page of the My Green Michigan contract.
Sure.
Could you walk me through why the businesses, through Luna's Eyes, Western Market, Space Cat, and Drifters Coffee, were those selected due to an anticipated need in those sections, or was that just something that was convenient for My Green Michigan?
Yeah, so those business participants were actually an original program as part of the pilot that was grant funded. So our grant was able to set aside a little bit of money from the residential program to allow some businesses to participate as well. So those locations are actually the individualized business locations where they're collecting their food waste on site and it's being picked up. You know, following they started a few months after the residential pilot kicked off, and they will be closing up December, January. So following that year-long pilot, you know, we will kind of communicate with those individual businesses and understand if they want to, you know, continue service, and if that's the case, we'll help them set up their own accounts. And then if they, you know, no longer want to continue service, then that is an option as well. But those business accounts that have been subsidized throughout the grant, throughout this past year, will be ending in January. And then following that, the city will no longer have those as a part of the contract, but instead we'll help them set up their own contracts.
Is there any capacity to look for additional grants to expand that out to other businesses?
Definitely. Yes, the EPA just last week released new recycling and composting grants, so I'm definitely looking into the potential for applying for grant funding to help increase the business participation rate and expand the business program, because I do think that will be a really big next step in order to increase our diversion rate.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I made through the chair. So I noticed that there's certain compliance-related issues regarding the liners for when people turn in the composting. So question. I see the standards here, but if they're not those standards, how do we know? I'm asking personally because I purchased some through Amazon, and I don't know if they're these standards or not.
Yeah, that's a good question. And we made sure to indicate that on our program communications as well, because I think it is a big question for a lot of folks. You know, products are really readily available now, but it's hard to know what they're made of. So the program that we work with in our hauler requires BPI certification. So if that certification is listed on the products that you have, you know that they're good to go. And then if it's not listed, then it shouldn't be used as a part of this program. So we've got the BPI logo on our flyers that we give out and our different program materials, because it's pretty easy to kind of identify the logo, whether it be on the bag itself or on the box that the bags come in, and just a little bit of, you know, further information about what that means and what BPI certification is to hopefully help limit the contamination rates that would occur.
And if I may, through the chair also, so when this comes back in January with the report, could maybe there be some sort of visual regarding the acceptable bags and what they look like and things like that? Because I
Of course.
with our best intentions, we still may get it wrong.
Yes. And that's exactly why, too, there is a contamination rate up to 5% that is allowed by My Green Michigan through the hauling contract, to kind of address some of those oopsies of, you know, miscommunication from different participants. But yeah, one thing that I will be adding as a part of the program expansion will be an e-newsletter that will go out to all the participants that have registered for the program, so I can do continued follow-up education and let people know of different changes that might be happening in the space, since this type of thing is always, you know, receiving different updates, and help, you know, the continuing education to make sure that we're, you know, creating the best composters we can have.
I just want to mention that Walking Lightly on Hilton, our first zero waste retail store, they provide compostable waste bags that are certified. So if you wanted to do shop local for your bags, I encourage you to do that. That's where I got mine.
Nice.
And they also have countertop compost bins. So I have 2 bins, one for my countertop, which I take out to the outdoor bin.
That's the system I use too.
Otherwise, I won't compost. So anyway, you just got to work through what works in your household, what other family members are willing to do.
Yeah.
So, last chance?
I have one more question.
Final question?
Yes. And I apologize for the rabbit hole I may be leading people through on this question. So the whole idea of the program is to divert organic waste from landfill. We currently pay per tonnage a certain rate, a certain amount of money. Are we weighing the food that we're within this program to see how much we're diverting?
Yes.
And therefore saving from our hauler? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and that'll be in the final report as well, which will calculate both based on the weight and the costs associated with that weight, to understand what the diversion rate really means in terms of our normal sanitation collection.
Thank you.
As a personal experience, my household has reduced our trash waste significantly. I almost don't even have a full trash bag full of trash in
That's
my
great.
trash can on a weekly basis. However, the recycling bin is overly full. And my compost, we go once a week to the
Great.
compost drop-off.
Yeah, it's estimated that about 40% of all household waste is organic waste that could be composted. So it makes sense if you're down about, 40% of your waste, then
And that's usually the heaviest.
correct.
Is your
Yeah.
food waste is usually your heaviest.
If anything, this whole program has showed me how much single-use plastic we use, because that's what's remaining in my trash bin that can't be recycled. So,
I'll work on that.
well, I'm trying to reduce my single-use plastics. All right, well, thank you so much for this presentation, but we need to have a motion to approve this item, which was 8D on the regular agenda, moved up to 4C.
3C.
It's technically 4C under presentation. So,
Mayor, I move to approve the contract from My Green Michigan for residential food waste hauling services in the amount of $30,535 and authorize the city manager to sign the contract as submitted by the Zero Waste Program Coordinator.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem James and supported by Councilwoman Mikulski.
Thank you.
James.
Yes.
Mikulski.
Yes.
Leaks May.
Yes.
Polika.
Yes.
Piana.
Yes. All right, so we are now on to call to audience, and we set aside 30 minutes for this segment of our council agenda. And anybody can speak on any topic that is on their mind, whether it's on the agenda or off the agenda, and we ask you to speak for 3 minutes, and we have this clock up here to help be mindful. And who is managing the time clock tonight on staff? Thank you, Kara. And of course, please be courteous and follow our discourse with dignity guidelines, and make sure that people feel welcome and heard in this chamber.
Good evening, Council. My name is Dan Martin. I'm here with a couple.
Time's up. Oh, I'm kidding.
What's that?
I said time's up.
Oh, sorry.
I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
I believe it. So I'm here with a couple hats on tonight. The first one is President of the Housing Commission in Ferndale. I'd once again like to extend our offer to the program we just heard about. We have over 50 households in 2 sites and maybe a prime location for an expansion project or piece of that composting program. I'm a big fan of it, and I think what we can do to extend to the Housing Commission would be absolutely terrific. Secondly, as president of the Ferndale Community Foundation, it's the end of the year, and that's when we like to give away money. So the Community Foundation takes applications from nonprofits for programs and projects that are presented by nonprofits within the city of Ferndale that benefits the city or the residents of Ferndale. We have an application cycle going on right now, and that application will be on the city website in the next couple days with a deadline of December 22nd. We're taking grant applications up to $2,500 in any area for specific projects in arts, healthcare, education, again, anything that benefits the city itself. Not for general operating expenses, but really this is a micro grant that benefits the smaller nonprofits in the community, I think, the most. So on behalf of the Ferndale Community Foundation, I'd invite the grant requests, and if there are any questions around that, they're welcome to email me at dan.martin0707@gmail.com. And that's it. Thank you so much, and happy holidays to council and everyone on staff. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Dan, and thank you for that recommendation for composting at the Ferndale Housing Commission. I have a feeling that would be eligible for a grant funding. So, thanks to you. All right, who's next? Who would like to come up and say what's on their mind? Ideas, issues? Happy Thanksgiving? Share about your tree, holiday decorations? All right, seeing none, I am gonna close call to audience and move on to the consent agenda, and I'm gonna read it in entirety, and council can choose what their pleasure is in terms with the consent. All right, 7A, approval of the November 14th, 2022 meeting minutes. 7B, approval of the proposal for Motor City Electric Technologies, Inc. in the amount of $2,965 to supply and install an exit stanchion for the dog park at Wilson Park. 7C, approval of the resolution for a fee schedule adjustment to open dog park membership to non-residents. 7D, approval of interlocal agreement with the Oakland County designated assessor. 7E, approval of 2 resolutions to support the Michigan Department of Natural Resource Spark grant applications and authorization for the interim city clerk to sign the resolutions. 7F, consideration to amend Chapter 5, Animals and Fowl of the Code of Ordinance to change the annual permit expiration date to March 31st. 7G, consideration of resolution authorizing the city manager as a certifying officer for the city relating to the Shepherd House development located at 503 East 9 Mile Road. 7H, approval to apply for the Oakland County Senior Center's matching grant to receive up to $250,000 for upgrades at Martin Road Park with a 1-to-1 match. 7I, approval of the reappointment of Andrea Popovic to Ferndale Environmental Sustainability Commission for a 2-year term expiring November 23, 2024. 7J, approval to submit application for funding offered through the M Parks Foundation Play is Essential for All Equipment grant. 7K, consideration of the manufacturer on-premise tasting room permit for Urban Rest Brewing at 210 West Nile Mountain Road. 7L, Approval of bills and payrolls as submitted by the Finance Director and subject to review by the Council Finance Committee. What is the pleasure of council?
I'll move to approve the consent agenda items as published.
Support.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem James and supported by Councilwoman Leaks May. Mr. Clerk?
James,
Yes.
Leaks May,
Yes.
Mikulski,
Yes.
Polika, Piana.
Yes. All right, so that is approved unanimously, and we're moving on to the regular agenda, item 8. And first up is 8A, consideration to adopt the City of Ferndale Capital Improvement Plan 2024 through 2029. And presenting this is our Assistant City Manager, Kyle Paulette. Welcome, Kyle.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I have a brief presentation that really looks at what's new in the CIP and some highlights. And then I have a copy up here in case there are any specific questions. First of all, thank you to the CIP team, including our staff participants. We had some newer and younger staff on the team this year, and they really helped to round out how we ran this year's CIP. And then thank you to Krishna Azar from the Planning Commission and to Mayor Pro Tem James and Councilman Polika, who spent almost 2 full workdays reviewing every single plan. So, no changes on the definitions. This is our North Star on what can go into the CIP. We attempt not to add judgment on cost or feasibility at this stage because that is council's purview during the budget cycle. So, if it meets these requirements and is a service or project the city can provide, it goes into the plan. The only small addition this year, we allowed some software licensing as a capital project because there may be some changes to municipal finance in the next few years, so we wanted to jumpstart on that. The timeline is very compressed from when we open it, interview, write the plan, and then go to planning commission, the city council, and then the CIP is used to inform staff on budget recommendations and requests, and then ultimately council to decide what stays and what goes in concerns to funding. This year we added an additional year of planning. And this was due to the redevelopment ready community standards, which calls for a 6-year CIP. We are a certified RRC community, and so this was something that helps us be better in line with their criteria, although I will say, as you know, we have a 3-year budget. Internally, we project 5 years, so I think it was fair that some departments were taken aback at a sudden 6th year that they now had to project when who knows what they may need at that point. We also integrated Plan Ferndale into the ranking of CIP projects, and we were able to do this because of this awesome checklist in the plan that provides city values and gives you exactly what you need to identify those values in a project. We only assign one value per project, even if it had multiple criteria. So, for example, a new police vehicle is clearly more energy efficient as far as gasoline goes, especially since we are now buying hybrids. However, that sustainable component is not really the main purpose of the project, and so we ascribed healthy to it because it meets that definition quite clearly. And then continued from last year, we included PBB scores on each CIP project, and the score is based on the 5 criteria you see there, and it's strictly related to the program that the CIP belongs to or supports or most closely fits into. And so when you see a score on a project, that score is reflecting the vital and priority ranking of that program in the community. And so it's really up to council to decide if a project is vital to that program or not. So a few highlights. This is a breakdown of the general fund over the last 5 years, and what you see in the middle graph is the concerted effort from the city manager's office to dial back on capital expenses due to COVID, and then due to the facility condition assessment, and then due to the resident task force on facilities. And so costs were deferred until we understood where the community wanted those funds to go. This highlight compares police and fire CIP, and it's interesting because despite purchasing new vehicles in police every year, the fire CIP is vastly more expensive over the last 5 years, and that's directly because of the cost of ambulances and fire engines. And so it was important to point out that this council saved a lot of taxpayer funds going to new ambulance and new fire engine by using ARPA funds. It's nearly $1 million in capital assets that we otherwise would struggle to fund. And then a success story from the CIP. Woodward Moves was a happy coincidence when the resurfacing of Woodward was delayed a year due to COVID and our own request for the delay. During that time, staff and council were able to work with MDOT and Pleasant Ridge to create Woodward Moves, which is starting right now, just down the road. The reason we were able to pounce on this opportunity so fast is because of the planning from councils before and the CIPs. So back in the 2014 land use update, there was a goal of making Woodward more accessible. That went into the 2019 CIP, and so that idea of a plan was already there to pull from the shelf when the opportunity arose. And you see this in quite a few CD's projects. In particular, they are aspirational if an opportunity arises. And let's talk facilities. So, we had our facilities task force recommendations really only a few months ago, and we have some task force members here. I think I saw David Strauss, Gwen Ziegler, and Neil V. And these recommendations have already been enacted on from council. We were recommended to divest from the Coolett Community Center. That already happened for the Martin Road Park Recreation Facility. Grants are being applied for. So these recommendations and report really are a driving force for how we approach our capital expenses. And this slide really shows that. On the right, you have our facility needs over 6 years if we did not use any task force recommendations. On the left is utilizing those recommendations and understanding where we are going with our facilities. It is about $11 million difference in needs, and the Coolett alone is $4 million that are no longer competing for priority against our other needs. And again, this is the adoption, and we'll use it in December, January to start prepping the budget for council in April. Any questions?
Thank you, Kyle. I think the final CIP reports get more pretty and more clear every year, so thank you to everybody who put in the effort to update it and give us more alignment with the task force report and the master plan. So ongoing changes and improvements to the evaluation process. I'm going to open it up first to Councilman Polika and Mayor Pro Tem James, because they were the two council people representing council. If you wanted to give any comments about your experience being on the CIP team this year, or any thoughts.
Yeah, I don't have any questions because
I know you were heavily involved.
we've worked through this. I've already reviewed it with the Planning Commission a couple of weeks ago. But no, it was, again, a really great experience. Kyle, for the last several years that he's been managing the CIP program, continues to streamline the process, keeps it well organized. He makes sure that, you know, everybody that participates has all the materials that we need. And it was just a really great year. And it was very impressive. Most of the members, this was their first year. And for them to be able to catch on so quickly and understand exactly what the purpose of the project was and the work that we did, it was great that they were able to keep us moving along. And again, just a really great experience. So thank you, Kyle.
I will just add, this was my first time participating in the committee. And it was a really interesting and gratifying experience, actually, to spend a little bit of additional time with some staff that I hadn't really worked with directly before. But I just want to emphasize to community members that inclusion in the CIP document does not mean that it's necessarily going to be adopted by this body. So I just want to be really, really clear that when we vote on this, if we pass it, it does not mean that we are committing to all of these projects. That might be confusing for folks observing this process for the first time. Some will move forward, some will not. As Kyle mentioned during his presentation, when the time comes around for these to sort of ripen, they've been projected into different fiscal years. The costs will be updated. They'll be presented to council, discussed at a public meeting. It may or may not be adopted. It may or may not even ever make it to that agenda. You know, something could happen in the meantime that knocks it out of the running. And similarly, having a high score does not necessarily mean, you know, that doesn't mean you go through that graph and say, well, all these high scored ones, these are going to get, you know, the check mark right away. There might be other mitigating factors that it might not be a program or an investment, I should say, that'll be adopted down the road. And I'll also add that one of the interesting processes that we went through was sort of assigning the value that you'll see the descriptions of the values. I think it's on pages 5 and 6 in the attachment. And I'll just note that the decision-making checklist there fits better for programs and policies. It was a challenge to fit sort of capital improvement investments into some of those categories. Some of them didn't fit into any category neatly, and we had to sort of interpret the spirit of that value. And others, you know, you could have put them in any number of those values, and we just sort of had to figure out which one it went best with. And so just as an example, because the value healthy mentions public safety specifically, a lot of the public safety investments ended up in the healthy category because it was what worked best with the verbiage that was there. So all of that is to say, this is, you know, an improved program since the last time everyone went through it, I'm told. And it will continue to be refined and improved, and maybe these definitions will be refined at some point in the future. But ultimately, what I want to emphasize is that we're not committing tonight to all of these expenditures.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem James, for that context. Are there any questions from other council members regarding the CIP?
If I may, through the chair, first I want to say thank you to the committee and thank you to Kyle for I think this was the first year it was opened up to council. That was kind of great. I would suggest that if it's feasible, that we do have some sort of an appeal process, because situations change based on the decision that was made at one point. Maybe something's changed at another point. So I would, you know, if it doesn't, you know, prolong things too much, I would recommend there be some sort of appeal process to be able to voice why we think a project should go through in the future.
Don't feel bad. Mine was rejected too.
I'm just saying.
And I was on the committee.
I'm just saying.
Any other questions? I had a couple questions about some of the strategy or thinking. I'm going to page 20 specifically about the facility spending over 6 years. Sort of a reference to the facilities recommendations, because I know council still needs to talk about strategy and how we're going to, you know, strategize and budget for a lot of the recommendations. And to me, page, I think it was 20, was looking out projection-wise on them. And it's sort of like you sort of scratched out a chicken scratch, you know, strategy but a lot of maintenance, right? Just keep things running and not failing is how I kind of saw it. Is that what the committee looked at there? Does that make a, does that?
Through the chair, I think that, I don't see him here, but that would be a better question posed to our facilities manager. Because for the most part, staff really did the number crunching and the projections, and specifically with facilities, my recollection, and correct me if I'm wrong, Councilman Polika, was that there was sort of an understanding that a lot of these are rough estimates based on what this body decides to prioritize and what the options are moving forward with implementing any or all of the recommendations of the facilities task force. But we had to put something there to just have a baseline to start with.
And I can say as well, James Jameson, our facility manager, really took the task force recommendations into consideration. And so if the recommendation was, let's say, the police station being merged with Fire 2, that means any large project that could be deferred until after that merger would not be included in the projected need. We still have those projections should that not come to pass or council goes in a different direction. But we felt it was important to honor the task force report having just received it.
Okay. I appreciate all of that thinking, because I'm thinking, because we do 3-year budgeting, right? This is a 6-year projection with capital improvements. Taking action on some of the facility task force might not have any cost for it, right? It's just staff doing, administrative research, outreach and things like that, and may not have a capital improvement cost. But we're still making progress towards it. And so I'm just thinking about how we're going to have these, priority conversations for our budget sessions. And, because it's new this year that we're sort of taking all of this into consideration as part of our strategic goals update and moving into the budgeting process that we usually do for a day in March, leading into the budget adoption by council. So, in my opinion, the CIP is, even though not everything in there might not get approved, it's dependent upon this council to make sure that we are taking action on key priorities out of the task force, budgeting for them where we can, and showing real progress over the next fiscal year, budgeting what we can, but also projecting it out for year 2 and year 3, right? So, and honestly, some of this, I wasn't in the weeds like the task force, so, you might get frustrated with me or other council members who weren't in the weeds to really understand what these costs are really for and how they fit into the pecking order prioritization. That's my comment.
Through the chair, I'll take note of that and likely modify our typical March facilitation to account for a specific facilities discussion on what can and cannot move forward within a 3-year budget term. with the current financial constraints that we have.
Right. Right. And then what are activities that staff can work on that aren't cost prohibitive, but you can still make, progress, if that makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
Oh. All right, any other questions? If not, we need a motion to proceed.
I move that the City of Ferndale Capital Improvement Plan 2024 to 2029 as approved and recommended by the Planning Commission.
Work.
Moved by Polika and supported by Mikulski. And I have one final comment, mostly to address Councilwoman Leaks May, her comment about appeals process. If a council member has specific ideas that they would like to be considered but wasn't scored in the CIP, one way to advocate for your position is to call everybody on council to explain why it's important and you think it should be budgeted for. That is one of your abilities to, as an appeal process, is that you appeal to your council members. That doesn't mean you'll necessarily be successful, but that is one way to detail why you think it's important in a way that perhaps, having 5 minutes at the council dais isn't sufficient to explain why it was important to you. So that is one of my thoughts. All right, with that, we have a motion on the floor. Mr. Clerk.
Polika,
Yes.
Mikulski,
Yes.
James,
Yes.
Leaks May,
Yes.
Piana.
Yes. All right, we are moving on to 8B, consideration of a resolution suspending enforcement of certain zoning ordinance regulations that concern temporary accessory buildings through March 31st, 2023. And I think
Okay.
up is Joe and Lena.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. We won't be presenting anything formal tonight. This is really just an administrative review to present to council in an action. So about a year ago, City Council, through resolution, extended the suspension of certain zoning regulations that would accommodate temporary outdoor dining uses, specifically to benefit businesses during the winter that have been impacted by COVID regulations and COVID pandemic impacts. That resolution expired November 30th, 2022. So a year ago, we extended those zoning regulation suspensions for about 1 year. It was brought to the DDA director and my attention in November with some concerns from our fire marshal, our building official, and also the DDA director that this was coming to an expiration. Some of the businesses advocated for an expansion, and city staff have some ongoing policy and safety concerns that we also had to address. So over the past few weeks, the DDA director and I studied the issue. We contacted several neighboring jurisdictions to see how they've been adjusting in year 3 post-2020 pandemic, if you will. And the results are are summarized in this resolution. By and large, the water is muddy. A lot of jurisdictions are handling it differently. Every jurisdiction consistently has the same concerns, though, that our fire marshal and our building officials do present in terms of just making sure that we're not having policies that conflict against building codes and zoning regulations on an ongoing basis. So what we've ultimately agreed on as a recommendation for council is to not extend it for 1 year, but extend it till March 31st, so we can avoid another repeat of this again, because a year is a long time. We do think that in that 4-month extension period, I'm asking the Community and Economic Development Department to better formalize the study of all policies that have been adjusted around our neighboring jurisdictions, but also contact the state of Michigan and determine what best practices, if any, are being observed statewide in response to the COVID pandemic. And then I would like to shift this out of policy resolution and back into ordinance, where I think it's more appropriate. and take a long-term position through the ordinance committee, where we would then apply what policies and best practices we're seeing make sense into the ordinance and better formalize it through the ordinance. And I also think, to the DDA director's credit, she also suggested we take this opportunity to add in the mobile vending ordinance, because that also is about 12 years old. That ordinance as well has been temporarily suspended through the COVID pandemic to allow for outdoor vending, a food truck use expansion. So ultimately, we have an older code on the books for that subject as well. So it seems to make sense to tie all those in together in the study period and to give council a more comprehensive cleanup of both ordinances. And I would suggest that we put ourselves on the clock here and give you a recommendation by the end of March for adoption, because both of these code also survive past the winter as well. So this is an opportunity for us to go into a patio season in the spring and summer with predictable and informed ordinance regulations that are updated and current. Through the chair, I see that the council for any questions if you have on the resolution.
I will open it up for questions of council or the city manager.
I'll start. Through the chair, in terms of compiling all the information from neighboring cities through the department, do you have a timeline on when that might occur?
Should the resolution be adopted, I'll coordinate that with Roger. That's really Roger's department, but that would be a priority because I am putting the resolution. The resolution puts us on a clock. So I would suspect December and January, we would have the research ready for ordinance review.
So this is less of a question, more of a statement. It feels like a very condensed timeline for the ordinance committee, just knowing what we've gone through with other ordinances. Do you think that that's enough time? If you compile everything by, let's say, mid-January, end of January, we have enough time, February and March, to get an ordinance constructed appropriately and vetted back and forth?
I do. Okay. I do think with this specific subject, it's a bit more technical than other ordinances. So I'm pretty confident that we could get that done. But either way, the March 31st extension addresses the business's primary concern about the winter season. So if the ordinance does slip into April, then I think we've still addressed the immediate concern and we'll still be able to address the longer term solution we're looking to do.
That was basically my third question. At what point do the businesses anticipate taking tents and igloos down? So it sounds like that's the end of March, correct?
Yes, technically I'm suggesting that March 31st would be the expiration date of the enforcement suspension.
May I follow up on a comment that Councilwoman Mikulski said? She said tents and igloos. Does this include igloos? I thought igloos were an approved use in meet fire code. Is that correct?
Yeah, igloos are, they lie within a square footage threshold that allow them to essentially be under less scrutiny than other tents, which are of larger footprint and have a different impact on the code. But again, igloos are recognized in a policy, not recognized in ordinance. So this again is an opportunity for us to, I think, clean up a lot of the ad hoc policy changes that we were trying to do to be responsive in the moment, and now it's the time to organize them more and formalize them.
I have two suggestions, one for the DDA and one for staff in their research. I am interested in learning as part of the policy what cities are subsidizing or waiving their on-street parking to allow businesses to continue using their outdoor patio on public space, because cities giving away their parking is a specific subsidy for that business, which to my understanding, they paid significant reduced rates during COVID in order to put their outdoor patios for safety concerns. But looking broader through the Michigan Business League and National League of Cities with the push to keep, these outdoor patios permanent and remove on-street parking. I'm just wondering how cities are managing the, how do you give away the public space? Are you still charging? Are there discounts? It still costs money for the city to maintain liability risk and maintenance of those parking spaces on behalf of the business, even though there's a cafe underneath. So that is one suggestion. That is where I'm looking for information. And then second, throwing on my Wayback Machine hat, I was on council when the DDA board discussed food trucks in our downtown, and it was quite controversial a decade ago due to some of our restaurant establishments concerned about having competition during their lunch hours. And so I'm interested, where do we fall with that right now, a decade, 12 years later, as part of, embracing the food truck community beyond events?
Through the chair, Lena could certainly, she's much more adept at answering any questions related to food truck policy.
Yes, but when you come for a recommendation, it goes through the ordinance committee.
Correct.
And looking for that type of information as well, on the impact.
Yep. And on the parking side, I know the Ferndale specifically, the parking fund is the primary revenue source for our bond issuance repayments. So that's something that Ferndale, it's a good example of just the different challenges each city faces. Not every city's parking system is going to have the same variables, right? So for Ferndale, we take that into account.
Yes, I know.
And I just want to, before we get to motion through the chair, I realize I've been doing all the talking. So Lena's back in the audience. I wanted to give her every opportunity to speak on behalf of the DDA and the business community.
Good evening. My name is Lena Stevens. I'm the DDA director. I don't have too much more to add to this. I think this is, a complex topic. We obviously, made a lot of efforts during the pandemic and then, in the year following the pandemic to offer as much flexibility as we could. And now I think we do need to take a step back and balance those risks and rewards. I think returning this process to sort of a more standard ordinance process is a good idea. I wouldn't change anything. I really wouldn't. I think it was good that we moved forward and tried to be flexible. We had an unprecedented risk with a pandemic, with a global catastrophe that we were dealing with. And now, I'm finding that in many areas of our operation where we have to still continually kind of get out of that emergency mode. You would think that we'd be kind of out of it by now, but we're not. And so I think returning this back to, full consideration, a full, research process, I think is excellent. So I just wanted to, kind of throw my support behind it. Thank you for the flexibility that you've offered over the last 2 or 3 years. And, I'm grateful to be collaborating with the city going forward. Yeah, and I'm here if you have any questions for me too.
Thank you, Lena. Yeah. And thank you for having prompt responses to the business owners who maybe weren't so generous in spirit towards you. So, with that,
Before we move into vote mode,
do you have more questions?
it's a question and maybe a suggestion. My colleague who also sits on the ordinance committee has now made me sweat a little bit, realizing that I'm probably going to be gone 3 weeks within this 4-month period. I'm wondering if, just to be safe, we might look at extending this through the rainy, unpredictable month of April to give ourselves a little bit of cushion. I mean, unless staff really is confident that we can rocket through and coordinate our schedules. Or maybe what are the pros and cons of adding a little bit of wiggle room to coordinate schedules?
Through the chair, 30 days, it's a council policy decision. I don't think it's a make or break. I think my point that I really wanted to make is to make sure we didn't slip into another season As a small business, you always have to prepare and shift constantly, and once you shift, you're past the point that you were just at, right? So I want to make sure that we're holding ourselves to an accountability standard still.
What I'm hearing is that staff can still hold themselves to accountability standard if we go to April 30th. And I know the two of you have worked tirelessly on ordinances and have had a heavy caseload the last 2 years. I think I would be supportive of adjusting. I know your meetings are intense. Would council members be amenable to that type of extension? All right. Who would like to throw down a motion?
Since I brought that puppy home, I will move to approve the amended resolution to suspend enforcement of certain zoning ordinance regulations that concern temporary accessory buildings through, let me pull up a calendar, April 30th, 2023, as submitted by the city manager and DDA director.
Support. Moved by Mayor Pro Tem James and supported by Councilwoman Mikulski. Any further comment? All right, let her roll.
James,
Yes.
Mikulski,
Yes.
Leaks May,
Yes.
Polika,
Yes.
Piana.
Yes. All right. Thank you to staff and the ordinance committee members for tackling that one. All right. Next up is 8C, approval of the contract for website design and hosting services with Hadrout Design for a cost of $42,200 for project implementation and $1,850 per year for subsequent years, with an additional estimated annual cost of $490 for accessibility maintenance. And leading this is Kara Sokol, our communications director.
Hello, good evening. Don't worry, I only have like 40 or 50 slides. Get it? Because it's the last presentation of the evening. Okay, so I'm here to talk to you all about transitioning into a new website. I'm going to try to keep this nice and tight. So first of all is the why. Why is it time for us to get a new website? The first being, it's literally time. We have had our existing website since end of 2017, and industry standard is usually about 2 to 5 years, so we're at the very end of if we're going by the standard. It's also necessary at this point. Our 3-year contract with our current company is up June 30th of next year. And they have actually changed their business model, and they no longer provide web services for cities like ours. So they've been kind enough to keep us on and keep us supported for this year, but it's no longer going to be a reality with them after that. So it's time for us to get a new one. And we've also heard from our audiences, both internal and external, that there are some changes wanted. We know that we have some improvements to make as far as accessibility goes. We have heard a lot that the ad-supported search that we have on our site is confusing and hard to navigate for people. And the architecture of the site just needs a refresh, the design as well. So for all those reasons, we are moving forward. I want to give a quick thanks, first of all, to the internal staff members and council member who served on our stakeholder team. It's kind of an RFP process it can be pretty intense. We got a lot of responses back, so big thanks to Fire Chief Robinson, to our communications specialist Riley, parking administrator over in the public parking office, Marlo, city planner Kyle Bryce, and then to Councilmember Mikulski, who has a wealth of knowledge in this area, and it came in to be very useful as part of this process. Also, we got great assistance from our city manager. Excuse me, I've got these allergies that won't quit. So what are we looking for when it comes to a new site? We put out a pretty extensive RFP, but just kind of to go over briefly what was included in that. Obviously, we need a new design. We want it to be nice and clean and fit the city's brand. We want to take a look at our architecture and our site navigation, see if we can clean up some sections and make things a little bit more sensible to those who are using our site. We have, over the past several years, gone with a focus just on the nuts and bolts and basics. Our page views and searches continue to support the fact that our users are doing very foundational things. They're paying bills, they're looking at tax information. Our most heavily searched item in the last 30 days was leaves and leaf pickup by 50%. The month before it was elections. So, you know, it's very grounded to what's going on, and we want to make sure that we don't lose that in the spirit of a redesign. We want to take a look at ADA accessibility and work with our FAIAC to make sure that those needs are being met. And then for those of us who have to maintain the site, we want to make sure that we have a customer service friendly CMS, which is a content management system. That's the system that our staff uses to update and maintain the website. And then, you know, it's important for us also that we had a good customer service element in this. We're not experts in this. We do this as one of many, many, many jobs that we do during a day, and so we need the experts to be able to help us out. Quick review of the process so far. The RFP was open to the public actually the last day of July, and then was open for just over a month. We received nearly 30 proposals, which I can tell you actually it was 11,000 pages. So nothing was printed, don't worry. We did it all digitally. And then our wonderful internal committee got together. I went through them all first and did an initial grade. Our committee then got together and devoted several of their hours to going through and then further grading. And then once we got down to our top 4 candidates, we did interviews with them. The city manager was included in that. And then met additionally with Councilwoman Mikulski to kind of further research. And then that brings us to tonight when we're about to present our selection to you. If you approve, we'll move into the research and design process, and we should have this up in about 5 months. So quick look at our top 4 proposals. We had 4 different companies. We really went into this blind as me and as also our committee, and we just looked at all of the factors that we had put forth in the RFP. We didn't look at too much else, and you know, had to look at cost, obviously. Got some pricey options that just wouldn't have been feasible for us. So this is a quick look at our 4. You can see that the build costs are all kind of in the same neighborhood, between 30 and 43,000. The annual costs vary pretty extensively from $1,850 all the way up to $10,000 annually. And we've got them based in different parts. Galaxy Web Links was based in India, although a great representative in California who we were working with. Hadro is actually based right here in Ferndale. Civic Plus, which many of you probably are aware of because they do a lot of government websites. They've got offices scattered around the country. And Style Site was a small firm based out of California. And then I've also kind of given a quick look at the platforms they use to make these websites. We're certainly open to something open source, which means like a WordPress, something that is relying on an already designed template that's being customized for us with plugins. 2 of them, Galaxy and Style Site, both use those. Hadro actually does all custom design, so it's tailored to us. And Civic Plus, I call it a design in a box. They have a proprietary design that they use as a baseline that they'll then build based on that. You can see that of all the proposals, not the top 4, the average build cost was over $82,000. The average annual costs were just over $11,000. So we did move to the lower end of that as we were looking through these. And I'm happy to report that we all, the committee, me, city manager, and Councilwoman Mikulski came to a unanimous decision. Our first choice was Hadro Design for Business. They are based here in Ferndale, like I said. It's woman-owned and operated. The owner here, Maria Petrenko, will let her stand up afterward and introduce herself. There's 20 years of experience there. They have a 99% client retention rate, which is awesome. And they do have experience working with a number of, development authorities and chambers of commerce. They've also done a great site for downtown Detroit parks. And they're currently working with the city of Berkeley, who has wonderful things to say about them. They've done logo design, and now they're moving into some web for them. And they said that the process has been phenomenal, and working with Maria has been phenomenal. So can't ask for better than that. A little bit about the work that they'll do for us. Like I said, this is a custom design, which means that there will be templates of what the site would look like that we can choose from. It will be designed by a firm who is based in and knows Ferndale very well, knows our values, shares our values, understands our branding, so that's wonderful. They provided great discussion of the research and discovery phase that they'll do before they actually go into the design. We discussed a plan for incorporating all of our websites. So we have our main ferndalemi.gov. We also have parkferndale.com, which lives on its own. And we have ferndalemoves.com, which is our master plan from before, our most recent one. And the plan is that we would incorporate these all into one. We discussed this with all of the firms. There are differing opinions. We agree that the parking website stood on its own at a time when we had a lot of activity going on there and a lot of developer information. But now that the dot is here, it probably makes most sense to incorporate back in. And they use something called Accessibility, which we've researched. This is something that will help us maintain the accessible nature of the site as we go forward, which is incredibly important. And also a really popular CMS system that will help us maintain updates without relying too heavily on them. This is a quick look at the implementation schedule that Hadro provided for us. It's about a 120-day process, and we're going to work really hard to keep tight to that. You can take a quick look. We start with project kickoff and the research and discovery phase. We'll move in 3 to 4 weeks in, looking at some designs. We will then move in the following month, which at this point would be February, into some prototypes, and the programming phase begins around the end of February. And then we're moving into a beta version of the site for testing, working out the final kinks, all the content migration, all that kind of stuff, all the heavy stuff, and finally launch. We're hoping by the beginning of June. We have until the end of June before our contract expires, but we want to be about a month ahead of the game just to make sure. And that's it. And like I said, Maria is here and happy to answer any questions you might have, as well as me, of course. So by all means.
Thank you for the presentation, Kara. Like I always do, I offer up the council person who was on the committee to start with some comments about your experience and any thoughts that you may have.
Well, first of all, thank you, Kara, and thank you to the rest of the team for just sifting through so much information. I know it was a labor of love and something that you definitely wanted to do. But I also know how difficult it is, especially when you're not in the deep of building websites on a regular basis. In terms of this group, one of the reasons that I really like them is, number one, they do fit our values. Number two, the open source sort of system, the CMS, that's wonderful. It's portable, and that is wildly valuable when you're building a website. Compare that to like a Civic Plus, where you're in their system and there's no real portability. You basically have to rebuild it if you want to go somewhere else. It's a huge competitive advantage, and typically I like WordPress, but PIMCore is basically the same thing. And I'm not gonna geek out too far. I can already see your eyes.
You lost me.
But
2 minutes ago, you lost me.
I researched them. I went and visited and learned what they were.
yeah, it's again, I'm impressed with the systems. I'm impressed with the code. The code is nice and clean. The system PIMCore should be very easy intuitive for our staff to use if they need to make quick adjustments to the website. And if they can't, our web firm is right in downtown. You can literally walk down the street and knock on their door and ask them to help. And that's huge. In addition, the price point was great. It was a very solid initial build out and then ongoing price point. And your staffing looks fantastic. And then the referral from Berkeley, the actual testimonial, was really heartening. I felt really good knowing that one of our neighbors is using the same firm to build out their website. So all in all, very impressed and very excited about the possibility of moving forward.
Great. It was good to have your expertise on this committee, so thank you. Are there any questions? I know someone.
Comments.
I know someone has a specific question, so I'm gonna.
Through the chair, yeah, so, number one, thank you to the committee for doing all this work, and to Kara and Councilwoman Mikulski especially. I know that you both have expertise in this area, and I was very grateful that you guys got to make this proposal so that we didn't have to do a lot of second guessing here. And I'm going to remind myself that we're not going through the substance of the website today. We're just talking about this contract and deciding who we're going to be working with moving forward. But looking at your timeline, I'm wondering, and community members might be wondering, will there be an opportunity for public input? You know, what content have they been looking for that they've had a hard time finding? You know, what models and suggestions do they have? And or have we already gathered that type of input through a survey or other data collection method?
We have gathered some of that input. We have certainly compiled that about accessibility issues, as well as a project that was carried out by University of Michigan Citizen Interaction Design students last year. They were actually working through Jordan Twardy and CED, but did a deep dive of our website and ran some pretty significant surveys and research. However, I'm going to let Maria come up and talk about her process for how she gets to know the community and the site and that kind of thing.
Hi, Maria.
Hi, I'm a little nervous. Not what I do. I'm a programmer by trade, right? So first of all, I just want to say thank you. You know, we moved to Ferndale a little over 10 years ago, and I was terrified. You know, we came from Ann Arbor, and we rented a little space right on 9 Mile, and the community was so welcoming. And in fact, Dale, who was hanging out here earlier, he was one of the first people to pop in and be like, hi. So it was always kind of my dream we've done so many websites. I mean, we've designed close to 350 websites since we moved into the city of Ferndale. And we always talked about how cool would it be to actually do the city website for our own city. So it's like, yay, it's very exciting. So the process, you know, I lived in Ferndale for over 12 years. So I have paid the bills. I have used the website. So I know internally the struggle, the daily struggle. Probably what we will do is one of the things that we would consider, we will work with communications department. It's different for Berkeley. We just completed that process. Usually what we would do, we would put out a temporary survey that would ask very specific questions. So, you know, everybody's got their opinions of what's beautiful, or what's applicable, or what's user-friendly. So we will try to gather some kind of like medium data and then decide how this data should be interpreted. So again, even with the statics, depending on how communication committee decides, or communication department decides to do that, with Berkeley specifically, we redesigned their logo, and what we did, we created a pool of stakeholders, about 250 people, which city manager and communications department chose, and literally just put out a SurveyMonkey survey where we said, okay, those are the 6 color palettes, right? And one thing that you don't do in my work, you don't ask what you like, because it's just like opening a can of worms you don't want to go into. So we would ask very specific questions. Do you think this ballot represents the city? You know, if you were to describe your city to somebody else, what colors would you use? Don't use more than 3 colors. So we ask questions that are actually pertaining to the project versus their, you know, actual preferences. So again, we will work with communications department to determine how deep into this process we need to go, but the tools that we have available and that we've used before are plenty.
Thank you, and just to capitalize on a follow-up, I've always really liked Berkeley's website, so I'm thrilled that we get to work with their designer.
No, yeah, it's been an interesting, I mean, I'm kind of like more your designer, but I'm just lucky that I got that project as well. You know, yeah, it's been an interesting process, and though the communities are similar, they're also very, very different. So I'm sure the design is very different, and what Berkeley is trying to be, or you know, grow up to be, like all of us, we're still growing, right? Is probably very different what Ferndale is trying to achieve. So what I will not do is I'm not going to take Berkeley's process and apply it to Ferndale, because it's just, you know, community. It's like Ferndale will never be Royal Oak, will never be Berkeley, you know. So I think it's a unique city, right? We all know that.
Any other questions?
No questions. I just wanted to share that I look forward to supporting a local business. I think it's going to be great. And I really want to thank the committee for their work, and particularly Councilwoman Mikulski, because, you know, we all have our own kind of expertise in various things, and websites is not mine, and I trust you completely in knowing exactly what's going on and what you think is the best to do moving us forward. So I really appreciate you using your skills and expertise and your time and effort in working with the committee and making this decision. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And you know, Kara can attest, I'm very available. So if somebody wants to just email or call and ask a question, well, you know, we can have a conversation. Because websites is what I do. I could never be on a city council. So.
Never say never.
I've been,
I actually said that. So, all right, we need a motion to proceed.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right, I will move to authorize the communications director to sign the contract for website design and hosting services for ad route design for a one-time cost of $42,200 to be paid for from account 101-173-818-000, and to authorize annual maintenance and support fees totaling $2340 to be paid for from account number 101-173-818-140. Oh, I hate all the numbers. As submitted by the communications director.
Support.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem James and supported by Councilman Polka.
James,
Yes.
Polika,
Yes.
Leaks May,
Yes.
Mikulski,
Yes.
Piana.
Yes, and thank you, and I hope we all meet the deadline of June 30th, so our website doesn't go dark when the other contract ends. So you're under a deadline, a tight deadline, it looks like. And thank you to you both and the committee. Okay, so that concludes our regular agenda. And we are moving on to call to council, leading with department updates, led by our city manager.
Thank you, Mayor, for this evening. Excuse me. Thank you, Mayor, for this evening. We'll begin with Emmanuel Johnson from Parks and Recreation.
Good evening, City Council. So just a quick update from Parks and Recreation. This weekend, we will be hosting our Santa Parade in conjunction with the DDA. We will be visiting several different city parks where we'll have Santa come and sing some songs and greet some kids and pass out candy canes, and it'll be a great time for everybody. We intentionally spread this out to different city parks to afford more people the opportunity to see Santa. That being said, the major function that we have will be at Schiffer Park at 3 o'clock. There we'll have s'mores, we'll have the opportunity for kids to sit on Santa's lap and tell them everything that they want for Christmas. We'll also have a letter writing station and a mailbox where they'll be able to write their letters out and drop them in the mailbox right then and there. The event is completely free to the public, and the schedule for all of our stops is posted on our Facebook page, the City of Ferndale Parks and Recreation Facebook page. And we welcome everybody to come out and join us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Next, we have Police Chief Emmy.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Just a brief reminder, though I will be staying in town for the holidays, a lot of our residents will be venturing out of town. So if you're heading out of town, please call the Ferndale Dispatch and tell the dispatcher that you're going out of town, and we'll put you on our vacation watch list. We'll have our auxiliaries and our regular officers keep an extra eye on your place while you're out of town. If you provide contact information, we will reach out to you if something looks out of place. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. And next, our DPW Director, Dan Antosik.
Good evening tonight, everyone. So this is just a reminder that this week will be our last week of curbside leaf collection for those leaves that are placed out into the street that will come by and pick up with our equipment. Residents will still have 2 more weeks. The week of December 12th will be the last week to place yard waste bags out or labeled containers with yard waste for collection by our hauler car trucking on your normal collection date. If for some reason you just have a pesky tree that is not dropping their leaves like the majority of Ferndale already has, Sakura will be available after curbside yard waste collection does end. That residents could take their yard waste bags there. You can take up to 10 bags a day while Sakura is open until curbside yard waste collection returns in the spring. That does not have an impact on our chipping service. Chipping service will continue to run through the winter like it always does. So those that have live Christmas trees or anything like that can still put those out after they take them down, whether that's end of December or into January. So any questions about that, feel free to give us a call at DPW.
Through the chair. Is there any chance that the street sweeper might run after the final leaf pickup?
There is a chance that the street sweeper is going to be running after the final leaf pickup.
That would be awesome. Thank you.
Yep. As long as temperatures kind of stay up, that's basically what our plan is for next week. Yep. Cool.
Next is Fire Chief Teresa Robinson.
Good evening, everybody. So just a couple of safety reminders going into, as we close out our year. For anybody who does the live Christmas trees, please keep them well watered so they don't dry out. Check all your Christmas lights before you put them up on your house, your tree. Make sure they're still in great shape, there's not broken wires. And be really conscious about spreading out where you're plugging everything in so everything's not drawing off of the same outlet and overloading it. We want everybody to have a really safe, happy holiday season. And candles, they might uptick this time of year. Be conscious about the decorations while it looks pretty around candles, don't have burning live candles with a lot of dry or, fake foliage around it that could catch fire. So again, be safe, think about that. If you're using a wood burning fireplace, highly recommended to have it inspected and cleaned annually. Again, keep it safe so you don't end up with unexpected fire. So. Any other questions? And then watch for safety tips starting throughout the year through our social media. We worked out in working on a great program with our comms department and have some stuff that's already designed that they'll be able to push up. So throughout the year you can get safety tips to help everybody with different stuff that's pertinent to that season and that month.
Through the chair. And I believe, just to remind senior citizens, that I believe you offer the service that if they need you to help them with their fire alarms or smoke alarms, that you would be able to do that if they contact you with a non-emergency phone number?
Yeah, so actually, it's not even just for seniors. There's a couple programs that, thank you, Councilman, to remind. So our fire department provides amazing service, and it's free home safety inspections that any resident in the areas that we service as their fire department can go on our website and schedule it, and we'll come to your house and do a personalized home safety walkthrough. It's not about us leveraging any fines or penalties, but we talk to you about the safety and the hazards and things in your own home, where your smoke detectors are located, where they should be, kitchen safety, just different things based on your specific home. So you get about 45 minutes of us, a very personalized fire safety education. And we do have smoke detectors for homeowners that we can come and install for free. Now, if you are a landlord, we cannot come install it at your home to landlords, but property owners, we can install them for you. And you would just contact the fire department, and we'll bring it out, and we'll actually install it for you.
Excellent. Thank you.
And finally, we have update to share from our DDA director, Lena Stevens.
Hey, good evening. I just wanted to give a little update about our winter shopping seasonal campaign that hopefully you've seen advertised on Facebook. I would love that if you're all already sick of it. So our theme this year, and we've kind of picked a theme every year since 2020. The pandemic really forced us into a lot more online marketing, which I think was a good thing for this DDA, and now we're continuing that, picking a theme each year. So the theme this year is Fall in Love with Ferndale This Winter, You Belong Here. So it really lets us bring in that theme of inclusivity, making sure that folks of all different backgrounds feel comfortable here. And so what you're going to see is within that theme, you're going to see a lot of marketing that can be very specific. So we've got advertising running right now that's specifically for salons and self-care. We have one that's for more geared towards parents and finding gifts for your kids. You're going to see some more that are experiential in nature. Go to Magic Bag, go to Loving Touch, go to, the Good Day Selfie Museum, all these kinds of experiences. And the idea is that they're really short videos, about 30 seconds each, and they show you pictures of inside, because when you're driving down, you all see the outside. You may not see some of the cool stuff. If you had, like, for example, if you haven't been inside Olive's Bloom Box, oh my gosh, that place is absolutely stunning, gorgeous. I went in and walked out with a $50 blanket, and I was like, what happened? How did that? Why did I do that just now? And so, we want to share that with as many people as possible. So just wanted to let you know that. So it's Fall in Love with Ferndale This Winter. If you go to downtownferndale.com, our website has gotten a little bit of a glow up. You can go to downtownferndale.com/shop. That's probably the best URL if you're wanting to share it with somebody. /shop. That's going to take them to a directory of places for yums. We call them yums. We call them unique gifts. We have fitness in there, we have massage, we have all sorts of categories that they can see. And if you think we've missed somebody, or if somebody reaches out to you, it is easy peasy. We can get them on there. And it's actually a really good time of year when people are looking at it. We get that directory updated for the rest of the year. So yeah, we're excited about that, and we'll probably push that through into January and February.
Thank you, Lena. The site does look great. I actually used as a referral to another city who struggled busing on their downtown site.
Well, that was built by somebody with a master's of public administration, so at some point we might want to hire our own website designer, but it's pretty good, I'd say.
Good job. Next is Finance Director Phil Whitfield, and then we'll close out with me.
Good afternoon, everyone. Just wanted to give everybody a quick update. You guys hear me talk about it all the time. We have a couple of things that we're wrapping up with the auditors now, and so we should be looking at a draft in the next week or so, and then we'll be on target for the December meeting for presentation. Also, we are finalizing our report for our community, towns, villages, and it's basically our tax, our money settlements. So those will be done this week. Those are due on December 1st. And so we're in good shape to get those out before the due date as well. So just kind of want to give everybody an update on those two. Any questions on those two? All right, you guys have a good night.
Thank you. Finance doesn't have the fun news to share, audits and tax billing, but both critical to operations. Look for those. I will share a few updates on behalf of the City Manager's Office. Just a reminder, December 19th, there is a double council meeting. Annually, we annually push 2 council meetings into one day in December. So that will be on December 19th at 6 o'clock. We will have the audit presentation. And at 7 o'clock, we will have a regularly scheduled regular agenda meeting for council. I want to acknowledge the efforts by our special events director, Michael Larry. He left a little quickly without me giving the gratitude of the 6 pallets of food donations that he was able to coalesce with his team at the Jingle and Mingle event. Those pallets of food were donated to the Ferndale Food Pantry, which is located at Renaissance Vineyard Church. So I want to acknowledge the work that he did, and he had mentioned there were some specific Ferndale businesses that actually participated a significant amount of food towards that. So I don't know those businesses, but hopefully we can credit them publicly for that effort. That was a great job. And also an update on behalf of Claire Dion. We will be sharing informational memos and water bills beginning next month. They will be educating the public on an opportunity to get a free rain barrel from the city of Ferndale.
Subsidized.
A subsidized rain barrel from the city of Ferndale, thanks to a grant that she won for us earlier in the year through Eagle. So look for those communications to begin to hit water bills beginning in December to tell you how to sign up for that if you're interested. And Mayor, with that concludes staff updates.
Excellent, thank you. I believe I started left the last time, and I'm going to start on the right this time with Councilwoman Mikulski. Any updates?
I have nothing additional.
I'll just add to the city manager's message about the rain barrel program. You will be seeing more of that, and I also just wanted to credit the Ferndale Environmental Sustainability Commission, who's really been putting together the nuts and bolts and logistics on that program. And just so people understand, when they do see this information, most likely what you will see is a very low-cost rain barrel program that might have tiered costs, so that people who really can't afford more than $30 or something for what's the equivalent of a $300 kit. We will have those available, but for folks who can afford to pay a little bit more, we'll ask that they voluntarily do, so that we can kind of spread them out in the city, especially focusing on some of those areas with clay soil, which happen to coincide with the lowest income households within the city. So if you can afford to pay a little bit more, it will help spread more out for the households that really can't afford it. But there will be a little bit of buy-in for folks who would like a rain barrel. And a lot of education on how to install and maintain it, because it would be a darn shame if we delivered 400 rain barrels that froze the first season.
Well, next day.
I just want to extend my condolences to the members of the community or neighboring communities over the holidays. We lost Judge Jamie Wittenberg, who is the brother of our former state rep and current Oakland County treasurer. And then I got word, I think from Mayor Piana, that we also lost Keith McClellan, who is the spouse of the current mayor of Oak Park, Mary McClellan. So in addition to that, there were a couple of other friends of mine that, are no longer here. So I just want to extend my condolences out to those all of those who lost loved ones over the holidays, and just a reminder to kind of hug your people a little more and spend as much time with them as possible, because we don't know when it's the last time we'll see them. So that's all I have to say.
I have nothing this week, Mayor.
Excellent. I really don't have anything either. Other than I attended Small Business Saturday, dropped some coinage in downtown Ferndale, and talked to business owners. Had a really great time, and really loved the jingle and mingle. So with that, I'm calling it at 9:35. Have a good evening.